All right, in this one, we're going to take a look at how to manipulate objects in Blender. So we took a look at how to navigate in our scene, but now we want to go ahead and move these objects around. So different ways to do it. If we left click on this cube, we can select it, and you can see that there's an orange contour line around whatever you select. You can also see that there's a little tiny orange dot in the middle of the cube, and that is the origin point of the object, meaning this is from where it moves, scales, and rotates. You can see that all objects have an origin point and an orange contour line around them once you've selected it. To select multiple objects, you could hold down Shift and select multiples, or deselect. All right, let's select the default cube, and to move things around, there are many different ways to do it. The best and most effective way that everyone does is with shortcut keys. So Blender is very shortcut key intensive. So you'll notice that you'll use a lot of shortcut keys. The first shortcut key is the G key, which allows for us to move our cube. So when you hit the G key, it basically grabs it. Now, if you right click, it will just not confirm the movement. However, if you hit G and then left click, it will confirm the movement of the cube. And then you could hit G again and move it again. Pretty cool. So G is to grab. Next is R is to rotate. Now once again, you could hit R to rotate, right click will not confirm it, or if you hit R, left click will confirm it. Now another hot key is Control Z, which will undo, and you could undo whatever you just did. Now keep in mind that R to rotate will basically rotate it in that perspective. So if you're facing it this way, it will rotate it like that. If you hit 1 to go into front view, it will rotate it from this angle. You could also hit R twice, and this will tumble rotate it, which is pretty useful too. So once again, G to grab, R to rotate, right click doesn't confirm that movement, and left click will confirm that movement. And Control Z undoes whatever step you did. Next is S to scale. So we could scale up and down, make it really big or really small. Once again, right click doesn't confirm it, and left click confirms it. And so now we could combine all these, R to rotate, G to grab, and S to scale, and check it out. Pretty cool. Now, if you want to clear an object's movement, rotation, or scaling, you could hit Alt-R, and that will clear the rotation. Alt-S will clear the scale, and Alt-G will clear the grabbing. Pretty sweet. So that is how you move or manipulate an object. G, R, and S. Now, there is another way to do it. If you hit the N key, you can see that over here we have the transform properties or toolbox. And over here we can see we have a location, rotation, and scale. So when we grab it, for example, if we hit G, we could see that these values are moving right here. So now those values are there if we confirm it. And if we hit Alt-G, you can see that these values are reset back to 0. So we could left click and drag on these values or input a number directly, and it will basically move that. Maybe put this one at 5. It will move that in either the Z direction. By the way, the Z axis, you can't see it here, but if you go into front view, the Z axis is the one that goes up and down. So Y is this way, X is that way, and Z is up and down. So you can left click and drag on these values or reset them to 0. So 0, tab, 0, tab, 0, enter. And same with the rotation. You could change the degrees of rotation right there, the scaling, and the scaling there as well, just like that. And change the rotation as well. So pretty cool. Let's hit Alt-R, Alt-G, and Alt-S to clear all those. So one way is with the shortcut keys. Another way is with these right here. I'm going to show you a third way. Why not? A third way is if we hit the T key, you can see it brings up this tool shelf, and we could left click and expand it. And right here, you can see that we have different operators. Right now we're on the select box, so this allows for us to select things in our scene. If we go over here, make sure the cube is selected, and click on move, you can see that we now have this widget. And this widget allows for us to move our cube. So if we left click and drag on the blue arrow, it will move it up and down. On the red arrow, side to side, and on the green arrow, front and back. Now, right here, you could also see that there's panels. So if I left click and drag on the green panel, it will move it on all the axes except the y-axis. The blue one, all the axes except the z-axis, etc., etc. Pretty cool. All right, we have the same thing with the rotation one. By the way, on the move, if you want to move everything except on the y-axis, you could just use shortcut keys. You could hit G. And by the way, if you want to move it on an axis as well, if you hit G and Y, X, or Z, it will move it on the axis. And if you hit G, Shift Y, Shift Z, or Shift X, it will basically take out that axis and move it along the axes except for that axis. So honestly, these widgets right here are not really used that often. Some people might use them. It depends on your workflow. You could use whichever method you like. But once again, shortcut keys are the way to go as it speeds up your workflow. Next is the rotation manipulator. You can see it's the same thing right there. You could rotate it. You could do the same thing by hitting R, Y, X, or Z to rotate it on that particular axis if you want to rotate it just on that axis. And then we have the scale one, same thing, S, Y, Z, or X will scale it on that particular axis. And then you also have S, Shift Y, Shift X, and Shift Z as well to exclude that axis. All right, let's hit Alt R, Alt G, and Alt S. I'm going to go back to the select box. Once again, I probably have never really used these ever. Maybe once or twice or 3 times at the most in all that I've used Blender for the last 12 years. But the best way, once again, is shortcut keys. We can hit the T key. So as a recap, G is to grab, S to scale, R to rotate, and you can hit G, S, R, and then an axis such as X, Y, or Z to move it along that particular axis. And Alt R, Alt G, Alt S basically clears those. One last thing you could do is if you hit G, Y, and then input a number such as 3, you will see that it will move it 3 over. So you could hit RX 45 and it will rotate it 45 degrees. So you could hit anything like that, such as if you hit S3, and you could even hit 3.55, and basically will scale it exactly that amount. So you could also input amounts after you hit one of the R, G, or S commands to manipulate your cube. You could input I was going to say dollar amount. You could input a numerical amount, well, obviously a numerical amount. You could input an amount and it will move it, rotate it, or scale it exactly that amount. All right, that's pretty much it. That is how you move and manipulate objects in Blender. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao for now. Au revoir.